He's taking the stage. Oh my god, he's taking the stage. Oh my god. Alright.
Alrighty. Well, now you know what my introduction looks like.
Mic closer.
Oh my god, that's what I meant to do. Anyway,
Mic closer.
so, closer, is that better? I have no idea how to use this thing. Right here? Is that better? Thanks, guys.
Alright, is that better?
Yeah!
There we go, now you can hear me.
Alright. Hello, everybody. My name is Rich Morgan. I'm a senior here at Albion, for those of you who don't know me. This would normally be the time in the course of my oration where I tell you a bit about myself, you know, and I tell you about my hopes and my dreams and my hobbies and my bulldog back home with the brown spot over his eye, but as you can see from the previous slide, I'm not really going to do that because I think it'd be a little perfunctory, but also because I'm insecure and I fear that I'd either bore you or end up embarrassing myself. So it's not you, it's me, okay? Now, I will tell you one thing about myself. I love movies. I adore film. If I could be anything in the world, I want to be a writer or a director or something equally useless like that. But that's probably not going to happen, so I got to be happy with what I do have, right? Anyway, the reason I mention this is going to become apparent in a second, as you might be able to tell right now. But tonight I want to talk about relationships, and I want to talk about love. And I admit that sounds pompous, but considering the most pompous holiday of the year is coming up next Friday, maybe it's appropriate. Yeah, I'm not bitter or cynical or anything, as you could probably tell. Right. So I got a tradition, see? I decided a couple years back, since Valentine's Day for me has typically been an either unpleasant or melancholy or uncomfortable experience, that I'd start to commemorate the occasion my own way, the Rich Morgan way, and that is to say, I'd watch a movie every year, the same movie every Valentine's Day, without exception. It's a movie that's very near and dear to my heart, something that means a lot to me. So by a show of hands, has anyone heard of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind? All right, good. Has anybody here seen it? Oh, good, good, good. So I'm not going to be spoiling everybody tonight then. I'm sorry to say there are going to be spoilers this evening. I'm usually against the practice of spoilers, but for the purposes of tonight, I am willing to make an exception. So, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind was a film released in 2004, directed by Michel Gondry, penned by the great Charlie Kaufman. It follows the story of a man named Joel and a woman named Clementine, played by Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet, respectively. Now, this isn't, as you might be tempted to think, typical Jim Carrey comedy fare. This isn't The Mask, and this isn't Liar Liar, though those are guilty pleasures of mine, I guess I have to admit. Anyway, Joel and Clementine meet one day on the snow-strewn sands of Montauk, and they strike up a conversation, and one thing leads to another, and bada boom, bada bing, wouldn't you know it, they're whisked off in a whirlwind of a relationship that is by turns exhilarating, yet tumultuous, and 2 years later, the whole thing comes crashing down. Now, this is only about 15 minutes into the movie, and it sounds like a pretty standard setup, right? But there's a kicker. Joel learns that Clementine has undergone a procedure to have him erased from her memory. And Joel, who's just absolutely indignant about this, decides that he's going to have the same procedure done too. And from this point, most of the film flashes back and forth between dream and reality, moving back through Joel's subconscious, starting with his most recent memory of Clementine, working all the way back to the day they met. As one by one, the memories are blotted away, and she begins to fade. Now, that's kind of cool, right? I mean, I imagine we've all been there somewhere in our lives where we've had someone or something that we wish we could just forget. Like all the embarrassment and all the pain and all the heartache gone like that in an instant, goodbye. And the film is cool for this reason. It takes this thing that we've all kind of felt but have never really expressed, and then it expands on that and articulates on that in some really interesting ways. And it raises some questions like, for example, say you were able to forget something, you were able to erase the mistakes you made. Wouldn't you just end up making the same mistakes again? If you could not remember how painful it was the first time, there would be nothing stopping you from going out and doing the same dumb thing again and again and again. And now, nobody really likes heartache, right? Nobody really looks forward to it, but the film begs the question, does heartache have a purpose? And I think it does. What's more, I think it's unavoidable, and I think it is absolutely essential. So what do I mean by that? Let's start with this. So a while back one night, I couldn't sleep, as I usually can't because I'm an idiot. And sometimes when this happens, I'll flip open a book to a random page and see what happens. This particular night, I flipped open my Bible to my favorite book in the Bible, Ecclesiastes, and I stumbled across this verse, and it had never really resonated with me before, but this time it leveled me, it got me right there, you know? This is the King James Version, Ecclesiastes 7:3. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the countenance, the heart is made better. Now that sounds silly in some ways. That sounds like nonsense, sounds like poppycock, and yet there it is, clear as a crisp spring morning, smack dab in the middle of Scripture like the cream in an Oreo sandwich. And it got me wondering, you know, pain and pleasure, love and loss, might these things be inseparable in some ways? Might they be inextricably bound, one in the other? Might one, in some weird, twisted set of logic, end up affirming the other? And I think so. So let's get into that. Now, by show of hands here, has anyone read Hosea, the book of the Bible from the Old Testament? All right, good. For those of you who haven't, I'll give you the spark notes. For those of you who have, I guess this will be a little refresher. So Hosea was a Jewish man. He was a serious man, a man of God. And God comes down to him and says, Hosea? And Hosea says, as a faithful servant that he is, he says, yes, Lord. And Hosea says, or God says, excuse me, Hosea, I want you to marry a woman named Gomer. And as if it weren't already bad enough that he had to marry a woman named Gomer, Gomer was loose, she was popular, she was the talk of the town, and she was faithless. And she slept around on Hosea despite the fact that they had a kid together, and despite the fact that they were joined in holy matrimony in the sight of God. As you might expect, Hosea is not entirely pleased with his circumstances, but God, as always, has a bigger point to make with all this, and it's not just that Gomer is a stupid thing to name your child, though I think that stands too. Now, God compares Hosea's situation with Gomer to his situation with the Israelites. I almost said Homer there, like he married somebody from The Simpsons. Anyway, the pain and the heartache that Hosea has to deal with on an individual level is something God has to deal with on a cosmic level, with the entire human race, day in and day out, 365 days a year, 366 if it's a leap year. And he is just mad about this. He's got to be thinking, you know, the Israelites, my people, my children, they turn from me and they turn to false gods and they indulge in vices and they engage in self-destructive behavior and they disregard the covenants that we made together. And he is likened to a jealous lover and he is irate, and yet at the end of it all, he still desires a relationship with them. He still wants them back. He gets down on one knee and pulls out a guitar and starts singing If You Leave Me Now by Chicago. It's really touching. And so, why would he do that? I mean, he could have at any point just disregarded the whole thing and says, nope, I am done with you people. Dealing with you is nauseating. It's like being on the teacup rides at Disney World. I can't stand it. You break my heart every day. I am through with you. I am through with your crap. Goodbye. But he doesn't do that. He still yearns for them. He still wants a relationship with them. I want to pace back and forth, but there's this cord here. I'm afraid I'm going to, oh my goodness. Anyway, God tries to stick it out with them. He still wants them. He still yearns for them. And I think it's because God understood something. He understood that there is no such thing as love. There is no such thing as a relationship without heartache, or at the very least without the possibility for heartache. To quote another of my favorite films, to love is to run the risk of failure, the risk of betrayal. When we love, we render ourselves vulnerable to all the pain and all the heartache that it brings with it, whether we like it or not. God couldn't even get around this with his own creation. How much less capable are we? And in spite of that, he was still willing to stick it out. Look at this. Everyone here has heard this at one point or another in their life. You know, they make little cheap bracelets out of this, and they etch the words into it, and they fill it with rhinestones to make it look all hunky-dory and all that. Love is patient, love is kind. It's 1 Corinthians, we've all heard it. But I got to thinking the other day, why does it mention love is patient? Why that specifically? And you might think, well, duh, love is patient. It's love, dummy. But there's got to be a reason it's mentioned explicitly. And perhaps it's because when we love, we are often given cause to be impatient. I mean, say you meet someone, right? And they're pretty grand. And one thing leads to another, and you're in that honeymoon phase, and everything is Lottie and Doody and Da, and rainbows and unicorns and lollipops. And time goes on, and you get to know more about the person, and you pick up on their tics and their habits and their little indecisions, and there comes a point where you just want to scream, will you make up your mind already? But love is patient, even when it's given cause to be impatient. Or why does it mention that love is kind? Or that it is not easily angered? You might think, again, well, duh, love is kind, love is not easily angered, that is what makes love love, and it is. For the reason that we're often given cause to be unkind, and we're often given cause to get angry. You have the frustrations, and the agitations, and the arguments, and the communication breakdowns, and the same tired fights iterated upon again and again and again, ad infinitum, to the point of absurdity, and despite all of that, love is kind. And it is not easily angered, even when you just want to rip your hair out and scream. Look at this thing. That is the single most unnatural, most painful, most difficult, most grotesque thing concocted in heaven or hell, because it goes against everything we are normally inclined to do and spits in its face. Where normally we would grow suspicious, it trusts. Where we would wither away, it hopes. Where we would back off, it perseveres. It is the most difficult thing on the planet, and that is what makes it so valuable. The value of love, of a relationship, is not that it makes your problems go away. I think it would be too easy if it did that. I would suspect it of being artificial. The value of love, its perfection, is predicated upon the fact that it stands against imperfection. That it stands against pain and indignity and suffering and heartache. Not that it makes them go away. And now, we're caught in a bit of a contradiction, really, if you think about it. Because on the one hand, we seek to avoid pain whenever possible. I don't think any of us would walk out of that window right there, because that would hurt. Similarly, nobody enjoys a breakup. And similarly, nobody enjoys heartache. And similarly, nobody likes waking up one day and finding that the person you spent so much of your life with is little more than a stranger to you now. But then on the other hand, we have a pleasure motive. And we want the warmth and the intimacy and the understanding and the empathy and the joy that comes with a mutually shared experience that a relationship offers. We want all the joys that love can afford without any of the pain. But the fact of the matter is, there is no way to separate one from the other. When you invite the pleasure, you also invite the pain, whether you like it or not. Again, even God could not get around this with his own creation. So how do we deal with this? How do we wed these two things? How do we, reconcile this? Because this is something we're all going to have to deal with at one point or another in our lives, whether in present relationships, in past relationships, in relationships yet to come. You will face this. Doesn't matter how good your chemistry is, doesn't matter how strong your bond is, doesn't matter how strong your commitment is, you will hurt. That is a fact. So how do we deal with it? I think there's one way to answer this, and I think it can be boiled down to a single word. Okay. Okay. So what do I mean by that? I have a clip here from Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. You had to figure this was coming at some point. And I would normally avoid using this, but I think once it starts to roll, you will understand the significance of it.
She's smart, I think. Not in particular. You couldn't really talk to her about books, She's more like a reading girl. A vocabulary of something you desired. Sometimes I was embarrassed in public.
Hi.
Library.
Hi.
Library.
I did not intend that.
Look what I found. I think if there's a truly seductive quality about Clementine, I said her personality promises to take you out of the mundane.
Maybe the skinny.
Easy burden.
Let's try to roll it again, I guess. Sorry about this.
Medium would carry you to another world, a world where things are exciting.
There we go.
It's really an elaborate ruse.
I'm sorry I yelled at you.
Access to the
It's okay.
kind of obvious, but still seducing.
Joel, I really like you. I hate that I said mean things about you.
Let me turn this off. Okay,
It's only fair.
Free spirits. It's all bullshit. I really like your hair. It's really pathetic. I really like your hair.
Thank you.
Shit. The world's a goddamn mess. This is like your hair color. I mean, you want a drink or something?
Do you have any whiskey?
This guy doesn't think her sex is motivated. I saw it clearly the last night we were together. It wasn't sex. It was just sad. Hey, sorry, I thought there was more. The only way Clem thinks she can get people to like her is to fuck her. Or at least dangle the possibility of getting fucked in front of her. I think she's so desperate and insecure that she'll sooner or later go around fucking everybody.
I don't do that.
I wouldn't think that about you.
Because I don't.
I know.
Because it really hurts me that you said that. Because I don't do that.
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry about all this. I'm even God, I'm a little confused. I don't really think I can be here.
Wait.
What?
I don't know.
What
Just
do you
wait.
want, Joel?
Wait. I don't know. I want you to wait for just a while.
I'm not a concept, Joel. I'm just a fucked up girl who's looking for my own peace of mind. I'm not perfect.
I can't see anything that I don't like about you.
But you
right
will.
now I can't.
But you will. You know, you will think of things. And I'll get bored with you and feel trapped because that's what happens with me.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry about that. I meant for that to be a clip, not a slideshow, but at least the audio worked just fine. But I love that bit. I love that. Even when it's all chopped up in a great big mess like that, it always gets to me. Anyway, it's kind of funny, you know? I mean, as I've grown older, I've just grown more disillusioned in general, right? I guess that's kind of the whole part about getting older, right? But I think back in particular on one person I used to know, and her and I were together a long, long time. And it ended just in the utmost misery. And I remember the arguments, and I remember the shouting matches, and I remember the long, uncomfortable silences, and I remember thinking to myself, why am I dealing with this? Why is this happening? Why did I get myself into this mess in the first place? But I look back on it now, even in light of what was supposed to be a clip, and I think, okay, even at the beginning we knew that it might end this way, and even at the end we remember the way things used to be, and I am okay with that. But I think on God, right? And there's a passage in Genesis in the story of the flood where God looked down and he saw the wickedness of man, and he regretted that he made man on the earth, and he grieved in his heart. And I love that moment because it's like God looking down and realizing, I got myself into a big mess when I made these people. But you take it in a larger context, especially with Ecclesiastes and Hosea and Corinthians and the life of Christ. And I realized there had to have been a point where God stepped back and he sighed and he said, okay, I know full well this is going to suck, and I know what amounts of heartache and pain this is going to bring me, but I love these people, and I am willing to stick it out for them, and I am okay with that. I am okay. And doesn't that make it all the more amazing, God's love? Love in general, that somebody can know full well what fury was about to bear down upon them and still resolve to see it out, trusting that it would all be worth it, and that one way or another, everything would be okay. Thank you.